6:04, I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is a little difficult with a long table like this, so please folks try to, in chair sit-ups, but stay connected with the meeting. That's, pretend we're in a circle. We do have a quorum. We are 99% there. I believe Sam is planning on attending remotely. We will, at some point, one member will be leaving from in-person, Rachel Gatus, but then joining remotely once she's out of in-person. Meeting purpose, very excited to have a special guest. We're going to be getting a report about where we sit, Braintree Elementary, and then, a lot of updates. Agenda, I just have a couple of really simple changes to propose. There is a second sub-bullet under ownership linkage. The third solid bullet, federal and state legislative update. First sub-bullet there, late liquidation. There will be a second sub-bullet, Department of Education.
I'll also talk about the recertification of Title VI.
And Title VI.
And I wonder if you want to consider moving the June board meeting date because it's currently on the night of culmination.
Okay. We will.
Brookfield's culmination event is on the same night as your board meeting.
Got it. And that's June.
In June.
All right.
Hannah, can
Yes.
we add, I just have Deb from the BSBA asked me to just remind new board members that they're doing a policy governance 101. Can I do that under board education?
Sure.
It's just going to be, here's this information, that's all.
Yeah. Thank you, Anne. One other from me under monitoring the organization, that's number 5. I'd like to swap the order of those bullets. So we'll start with the continuous improvement plan. And the second will be EL 2.8 because, I'll just give a justification here, I think it segs very well into our self-evaluation 4.1. So they're all kind of one unless anyone has anything, any oppositions to those updates, we'll consider the agenda updated. At this time, it is time for public comment. I'm going to read the preamble with one small addition. The board welcomes comments but is not able to take any action on them other than to direct the public to the appropriate staff member or to the complaint procedure, which is available on the website, the district website. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Time may not be ceded to another speaker. Comments are to be addressed to me, the board chair, or to the board as a whole, not to any individual on the board, on the staff, or in the public. Please raise your hand and wait to speak until you are called upon by myself. Please identify yourself with your first and last name and your town of residence. Please refrain from restating comments that have already been shared. You can certainly express agreements with the previous comments. Order and decorum shall be observed by everyone. Shouting and profanity are prohibited. As the board chair, I will maintain the order and decorum of the meeting. One thing to add, this, what we call a preamble, applies to emails that are sent to the board as well, email comments, stating name and the town of your residence also needs to be done in any email communication comment sent to the board. So anonymous comments will not be considered. With that, I open up the floor for public comment. And I'm getting to my timer.
Don't see
Okay.
any hands online.
I think I droned on for so long, maybe forgot their comments, but okay. Going once, going twice. Public comment is now closed.
And Hannah Sam is online now.
Hi, Sam, welcome, thank you. You can hear us okay? Okay,
Hi, Sam Lee.
great. I should have checked with everyone online that they could hear us okay. All right, so it's time to welcome our guest. Well, we welcome all guests, but we have a guest presenter this evening, Patty Sprague. We're sitting in your school right now. I'll turn things over to you.
Sure, great. I will share my screen online
Great.
so that you can see the presentation that I prepared for you this evening. Yeah, Michael, I was wondering if that would be possible. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Mike.
Better.
Great, so welcome to Braintree, and thank you for the opportunity to let me update you with what we're doing this year. I'll walk you through what we're learning, how we're growing together, and the ways that our students are connecting with each other in their community and the world around them. This year has been a year of powerful growth here. In addition to our academic gains, we've emphasized social emotional learning quite a bit this year. We've been working on behavior support and then deep connections to place here in Braintree. Our students have thrived in hands-on learning, and our staff has worked collaboratively to support all of our learners while also navigating some pretty significant challenges. And tonight's presentation will hopefully give you a glimpse into our celebrations and then our ongoing efforts as well. Measured by Track My Progress, 79% of our students in grade 3 through 6 are proficient or better in literacy, which is a 10% increase from the fall and the highest winter proficiency we've had since the implementation of Track My Progress. We're transitioning to STAR assessments for kindergarten through grade 6 to comply with Act 139 and early literacy reporting, and I'm really excited about that. It will give us much clearer vertical data over time, and it's much easier to report with families. In the meantime, Track My Progress helps us identify where students are growing and then how to support them as well. Math achievement is tracked in grades 1 and up using Track My Progress. It also shows promising gains here. 84% of our students are proficient or better in math, which is a 23% increase from the fall. Across grade levels in every math classroom, students are engaging with real-world problems and mathematical thinking that builds over time. For students needing Tier 2 support in math or reading, we have interventionists that provide targeted small group instruction and one-on-one instruction as well. And that ensures that every student is supported in their growth, whether they need challenge or a boost as well. Our interventionists are also able to work with kids on enrichment. While we're proud of that academic progress, it's also essential to acknowledge the realities that we're facing. Student mental health needs have grown more complex. We see an increase in behaviors like refusal and cursing and physical aggression that start as early as kindergarten and preschool. We receive approximately 100 behavior referrals each month, particularly in the primary grades. So this year, we've been fortunate enough to have a behavior interventionist and a paraeducator who supports behavior needs in the building, and that's been pivotal in keeping our students safe and supporting regulation in the classroom. For my personal professional practice goal this year, we've expanded our social emotional work through our skill of the month, which I hope to talk to you a little bit about tonight. That's our Tier 1 response to some of the needs that we're seeing across the building. Teachers and our SEL staff explicitly teach skills like empathy, cooperation, and emotion management in every classroom. So this is our kind of year at a glance, which is hard to see from here, but each month we have a different skill that we focus on. So this focus has really been a community effort. At our staff meetings, we talk about the month's skill. We practice some morning meeting activities as learners. Teachers then provide classroom instruction on each skill of the month with support from our guidance counselor and our behavior interventionist and myself. Staff have really leaned into this work with some real thoughtfulness and creativity. We've built staff capacity through shared language, collaborative planning, and professional development. As an entire district, we took responsive classroom training this June that gave us a really strong foundation, and a lot of those SEL skills are the classroom practices from responsive classroom that we've decided to focus on. Throughout the year, we revisited and redefined expectations for all of our shared spaces in the school as part of our PBIS program. You'll see the pause posters that were from a pause assembly, but then also near the phone over there, you'll see the cafeteria expectations. And a similar poster is in all of our shared spaces in the building. Our students are embracing the SEL work too. We've seen them take the skills seriously. They often name them during reflection or class discussions. And then at each month's pause assembly, we review the last month's focus. We recognize a few students who exemplified the skill. And then we introduce the new skill with a video or a book or some kind of discussion. There's a lot of joy in this work for us and for kids. Each month, the student council proposes 3 reward options for PBIS, and then the whole school votes to decide how we celebrate kind of living out the pause expectations together. This year we've had pajama days and dance parties and whole school games, and that really builds a positive school climate in those moments of connection for kids. And families are essential partners in this work too. So my weekly newsletter will introduce the skill of the month to families, along with practical ways to talk about and model the skill at home. These letters help bridge school and home, and a lot of families have shared how helpful it is to have the shared language across environments. Zones of regulation language isn't always immediate to families, so it's nice that we're sharing that with them. And I understand that that's really small print on the screen, so if you would like a copy of my presentation, I'm happy to share it with you.
That would be great, thank you.
Our SEL screening tool is called the DESA, and it allows us to measure students' social emotional growth over time. The data shown here compares fall and winter screening results, and it really highlights growth in the areas we've intentionally focused on, like self-awareness, social relationships, and goal-directed behavior. There is always room for growth, but this progress is something we're particularly proud of.
I can't see from here, but is
Sure.
that the bottom, is that the fall and the top is the?
The top is September in 2024, and then the bottom is January 2025. So you can see things like relationship skills flipped. In September, we had about a third of students scoring kind of at an appropriate level of relationship skills as judged by their teachers. And then January, we worked on those things, and now we have about 2/3 of students that are considered proficient in relationship skills by their classroom teachers.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm happy to share it with you. Food is a really powerful connector at Braintree School. Through our Farm to School program, students grow produce and flowers on campus. They cook together, and then they share what they've made. You'll see a photo here from one of our pesto days. Students made it from scratch with basil they grew in the raised garden beds outside. One of the most meaningful new experiences that we've started this year has been Cafe Catamount, which is a twice-weekly family-style lunch experience created by interventionist Amy Barrett. Many students have reported to us that they don't really regularly eat meals at a family table. So Cafe Catamount invites them to eat together. They use real dishes, they share food, and they practice conversation together. It's quiet, it's a really loving ritual that teaches the students and nourishes everybody involved. Our place-based work helps students connect deeply to the natural world around them, which is a Braintree value that runs deep. This year, students tapped trees, went ice fishing, tracked wildlife, and explored the landscape around our school. We received a grant from the Vermont Arts Council to work with local artist Troy Kingsbury. Students helped design and create really large-scale metal sculptures from recycled materials, and this spring those will be installed along the ADA trail that was built last summer.
You had done that the year before, too, I think. I had the artist doing the sculpture.
We had those huge puppets, Bread and Puppet came to do those really large puppets.
I swear, I ran into the guy over here.
Last fall. Yeah.
Last-
and we're-
oh, it was last
It was
fall.
last year.
It was
You're right.
last fall.
It was
Okay.
last year. Yeah.
For some reason, I thought it was the year before. Okay.
And then Zach Freeman is going to install them along the
Yeah,
trail.
yeah.
Coming up, our grand opening will be May 15th. We're having a really large farm to school event. We would love to see everybody there. And at the same time, we're helping students connect to the wider world. Our students have experienced other residencies with musicians and dancers from Syria, Ghana, and Mozambique. Soon we'll welcome Bamiwa, which is an Inuit performance group, for a 2-day residency. And these connections really help students see themselves as global citizens. We hosted a month-long residency in February with No Strings Marionettes, where students explored storytelling and engineering through puppet creation. We continue our focus on STEM instruction and the engineering design process, so students are really having high-tech, high-touch learning opportunities that stretch their imagination and also deepen their understanding of different cultures and ideas. There is a lot to be proud of. Our students are growing academically, socially, and emotionally. Our staff is committed and collaborative. And our school was recently ranked number 6 in the state of Vermont, according to US News and Report. Our work is complex and meaningful, and we're proud to be moving forward together, grounded in the belief that every child matters and every connection really counts. So thank you for your time and your support of Braintree School, and I'm happy to take any questions or thoughts that you have.
I'm curious about the Inuits because I've done some things myself in that connection. Where are they coming from? Are they from northern Canada? Or are they
Alaska.
Alaska?
Yeah, so I don't know if you're familiar with the PBS show Molly of Denali. It's a show that really exemplifies Inuit culture, and they made the theme song, which is how a lot of kids are familiar with them. We're super excited to welcome them.
Patty, I said this the last time you made a presentation, but I'll say it again. I would like to go to Braintree. Whenever I see your presentation.
It's a good place to be.
I'm interested, when you were talking about coming from the training and you said the phrase staff capacity and that it's grown.
Sure.
And that's due to partially to having a shared language.
Mm-hmm.
How does that affect staff capacity? Can you just talk, I'm glad that it's growing and that's really
Yeah.
to hear of how.
Not everybody has the same language that they're working under. We all went through the same training. We all have a common understanding of what cooperation needs to look like in a classroom. We're just kind of all working from the same book now. Everybody has different amounts of training and things like that. And so to take one common, responsive classroom training, just puts us all on the same page. Does that answer your question?
It well, so how does that affect, maybe I'm thinking of what you mean by staff capacity in the wrong way, because I'm thinking of it like it gives more time or...
I understand what you mean. It increases their capabilities and their capacity in teaching.
I get you.
Does that make sense? As
Yes,
like
it
professional
does.
development capacity?
Yeah, yes it does, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm somebody who has a teaching background myself. I've been in the classroom a lot. But I'm curious to get a sense SEL was not something that was part of the curriculum back when I was in the classroom. And how is it being intertwined, or is it its own subject matter? And if it is its own subject matter, what might it be replacing in some fashion?
That's a really great question. I'm glad that you asked it. So my career experience before coming to Braintree School was as an instructional coach, specific for math. And so I've done a lot of work around math anxiety in kids and adults. And I am a huge believer in social emotional learning when it's embedded into content. I think if kids are really struggling, if people are really struggling with content, it's important that the skills that they're learning are embedded into that. So an example might be, I've taught breathing to a class before, but it's through a GIF where different shapes expand and contract. And so we talk about the shapes at the same time where, it's intertwined with each other. This does not replace anything. Morning meeting has been a long practice here, and that's where a lot of this work is embedded. Our tier 2 and 3 students who need pull-out services for SEL interventions, that might look different, but really it's embedded into the classroom. It's part of, before a difficult assessment, they're talking about strategies for that. It's the water that we're swimming in now, if that makes sense.
So I know that the State Department of Education has an SEL program that gets farmed out to everybody, and it's different blocks of videos that people can watch. Is that something that you utilize, or is that?
That's not something that we're utilizing. We're building our own curriculum as we go, kind of incorporating zones of regulation. responsive classroom materials and kind of the wisdom of our behavior interventionist and guidance counselor. And what teachers need, that we're available on demand with these kinds of resources.
I'll answer. Thank you.
Are there other questions or comments?
I'd like to hear more about the behavioral referrals you had mentioned. I think you had said, correct me if I'm wrong, about 100 behavioral referrals. I'm not really familiar with that term.
Sure.
I know about IEPs, I know about 504 plans, things like that, but tell me more about these 100 behavioral referrals as if I know nothing.
Sure. So what we consider a behavior referral is when someone outside of the classroom teacher really needs to respond to a behavior. So anything that a teacher is calling to ask for support with.
Principal coming to the room or something like that.
Correct.
Okay.
So they might be things, and often it's refusal, but it really runs the gamut of any kind of those challenging behaviors that we're seeing.
And is that up?
Oh, massively,
Massively up.
yes.
Okay.
Compared
Just-
to last year? Okay.
Maybe not compared to last year, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Consistent with last year, decreasing over the course of a year.
Yeah.
Our students are experiencing challenges outside of the school day that impact their school day. And that is a change, even during the time that I've been here. My first year here, that really wasn't the case.
How long ago was that?
3 years,
Okay, so you're seeing a dramatic upward trend in the last 3 years.
especially in our youngest kiddos.
If you're able to, or if you're willing, and I understand if you're not, what would you attribute this to?
Every student, it's really a different situation. I think we, as a staff, talk a lot about the effects of rural poverty and how that impacts our learners every day. So, without going into specifics for certain kids, it's a challenging world for a lot of our students outside of Braintree School, which is why it's so important that Braintree is such a safe, consistent, and stable place for them.
Thank you.
Just asking, the food shelf has seen a huge number of people, and do you see that influence?
Yeah, we certainly do. We're meeting a lot of material needs for kids. Last year I got a donation of 100 pairs of sneakers, and now we're down to about 20. We're making sure that kids have coats. We're making sure that kids are ready to go outdoors. We are meeting a lot of material needs, and some of that, that sounds like a negative, but it's also wonderful. We've built a lot of partnerships for families, especially with Gifford, through the in-school nurse practitioner that comes. She does a lot of well visits for kids and things like that. But again, that's the school, building that partnership for families in a way that I don't think has been necessary in the past.
Patty, I have another question for you, kind of to go back to the behavioral stuff. I mean, and I think about this because I have my own primary school age child that, kids that are in first grade, they turned 2 the first year of the pandemic.
Sure.
So we all know about the terrible twos, and sort of the purpose about that is to understand how to regulate your own emotions within the context of community. And so we have really those primary kids were withheld from community during those key developmental times. So I just have kind of wondered about that, and I don't know if you have thoughts on that or if you think that's part of it.
I do think it's part of it. We talk a lot with little kids about following the group plan, and I think during a really important developmental phase for them, they didn't have a group plan to follow. They didn't go to the grocery store and practice shopping with their parents or things like that. And so it's really difficult for students. I think the increase in screen time is also really impactful.
Yeah.
All right. If you wouldn't mind sending that presentation to Kyle, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, of course.
And then,
And if you have any other questions after, getting a better look at the graphs or anything, just let me know.
Thank you
You're so
very
welcome.
much.
Thank you.
For the time to be here, which is, well past school day.
Happy to be here.
And for your work on the presentation. Thank you. Okay, so legislative update, both federal and state. Late liquidation. Heather, you had, thank you, communicated to us in an email. what was going on there, but do you want to talk about, or either of you talk about it at all?
Great, I would be happy to do. Included in your packet tonight is a letter from the Secretary of Education dated March 28, 2025.
This is coming from the federal level.
Yes, that's coming from Linda McMahon, the new federal United States Department of Education Secretary. This letter was sent after business hours, after 5 p.m., to our Vermont State Secretary of Education for dissemination to superintendents. That was then shared with superintendents first thing on Monday morning, effectively giving no overlap or any chance for us to be nimble and to respond. By the time we got the letter, it was in full effect. My original interpretation of the letter was that all of the ESSER late liquidation funds that we had moved into late liquidation so that we could use it for another year, which is allowable, were being ended on March 28th. Further meetings with Jill Briggs Campbell, who is the Deputy Secretary of Education in the state of Vermont, she's been holding a series of office hours that culminated today, revealed that the actual reality is that we have to reapply for any money we have spent since 9/30 on ESSER late liquidation. And I am absolutely committed that we are going to do that. We are going to reapply for every dollar, but it's about $300,000 that we have spent of that $450. And I anticipate that they're going to make the process slow and cumbersome. But I do think that there's no way they can really claw back that money. I mean, when you think about it, that money was promised for children to use, for schools to use to benefit children. And to pull it back, there's just no better use of that money. And we're going to jump through every hoop they tell us to get it.
I'm confused. Well, period. So they're requiring us to reapply.
That's right.
To get it approved to use money. Oh, you're preparing to be removed.
That we have effectively already used
So we're reapplying for approval to use it.
for reimbursement.
So Heather, you're not, or Hannah, you're not confused. The reality of it is we're reapplying to get reimbursed for money that we already applied to use and got approval for and spent.
Yes.
And now we're sort of in this gerbil wheel of federal politics.
So we may not be reimbursed.
That's a possibility, it seems.
Okay. But I have every faith in our administration's.
We may not be reimbursed in a timely manner.
Yeah.
I anticipate at some point they will have to reimburse, but they may drag their feet into our next budget.
And the real world impact of this, I believe, was the loss of all summer programs, is that correct?
That is a huge impact. That is an absolutely huge impact. Because we were thinking we had some money to use for that,
Yeah.
and this means that we don't.
Okay. And so my understanding is correct that there are no summer programs now.
The only summer programs will be those that are required by law for special education for students on IEPs.
Okay.
Does that affect all, like, the Parks and Rec program too, or is that a separate budget?
They have separate budgets and separate grants. This will not impact them because this was specifically a school grant. ESSER, the S's stand for, elementary and secondary schools. And so they may be impacted. However, as far as I know right now, they are planning to run a program.
So it's more like affecting all of the summer school type programs.
For public schools. Yeah.
We ran a robust, Martha, last year we ran a robust summer school program that got rave reviews from all of the families who participated in it. And based on what's happening with this, we don't have the resources to do that this year.
But it was good.
questions.
And does it affect all the lunch programs that they have for the kids and things like that too?
So this was a nationwide pullback of late liquidation funds. So it's impacting different states and different schools depending on who, some schools may not have even taken advantage of the opportunity to move funds into late liquidation. Not because they didn't have money, but because it took work to apply for each little pocket of money. So say, for example, we had written investment or an interventionist plus benefits, and then they didn't take benefits. So there's a little pocket of money there, right? We could have just let that money go, but instead we said, oh, we could buy a field trip with that bit of money, right? And so we did all this work to move money into late liquidation. We did not move any money that was connected to universal meals, but some districts may have.
Heather's being incredibly modest right there. Heather, in her role as assistant superintendent, did that. She figured out how to move, and as she said to you, we used $300,000 of that. So just that grant alone, what happened with that was, just as she's explained to you, money, that slivers of money that were left over from ESSER would have just gone back to the federal government at that point. But we, and by we, Heather Lawler, went and did all of the different
Thank you,
pieces
Heather.
required to make sure that those funds came in. I just think it's important that people understand what the role of an assistant superintendent kind of looks like in that place. And that's just one little example where Heather's bringing in much more than $300,000, because had we not got this letter, there was other money that we were prepared to spend. But at this point, we already think we're hopeful that it'll be reimbursed. We think it'll be reimbursed, but I have no guarantee that it'll be reimbursed at this point. I've never had to reapply after having something approved. It's a little bit like Lucy with the football.
So in regard to the summer program, I know the message went out that it was not happening, but it sounds like we could still reapply, or is that not happening because of the timeline of all of this?
So the state isn't even really clear. So we're going to apply for everything that we spent from 9:30 to 3:28 with a fierceness. We deserve that money. We'll get that money. I will also apply for everything we still would like to do, but I've been given the message that's less likely to be approved because we've gotten the letter. But I'm going to try. It would be really fun to surprise people with great news, but I don't want to give people false hope.
So in some settings, they've had after-school programs that have been run. I don't know whose budget that comes from. Does that include what you're talking about?
One of the ARP ESSER grants that we put some money into late liquidation was for after-school programming. And this has already impacted our after-school program. We've had to cut the Arts Bus, which was supplemental programming. They're doing their last service this week because we don't know that after March 28th, there'll be the grant funding to pay for them. We've had to cut some of the yoga that we had planned. So this is not going to cut our after-school program, but it will cut some of the supplemental things attached to it.
Some of the things, I mean, you just heard all of those things in the presentation that Patty gave that were important and made school meaningful and gave kids connections and whatnot. Those are being reduced with the loss of these funds. I don't know that those specific things are being reduced, but things like that.
Yeah.
No, they funded to
So I'd just like to conclude to say we're going to do everything we can.
Well, I want to acknowledge the work you did the first time around, and now pre-acknowledge the work you're about to, that you've already dived into.
Thank you.
That's a lot of work. So, thank you. And I have everything in you.
We'll keep you updated.
Great. Michael, Department of Ed,
You want to do the state first? You want us to stay on the federal vein first?
let's stay in the federal.
So in the federal vein, you may have heard about recertification of our assurance for Title VI compliance. Title VI is essentially been around since the 60s, and it's an anti-discrimination law, right? Interesting, every time we apply for a grant as the Orange Southwest School District, there are assurances that as a superintendent I have to complete. So Heather goes in, she does the hard work, I go in and say, we agree to these different things. And every time they've been submitted, we've made the assurance. So now we're getting this request, and it's coming at this point. It went from the federal government to the state. The state is essentially the fiscal agent for all of our title funds. And the federal government said, we also want the local education authority to sign off that they're in compliance with Title VI, which we already did and have done every year. Difference was this time they put a letter out, that multiple page letter that had some other language kind of thrown in with it, sort of trying to interpret Title VI in a way that is not how Title VI has been interpreted. And then what happened was, for about 72 hours, the deal was that the state wanted each individual superintendent to sign off on that. Oh, by the way, it needs to be done by April 10th. We need to consult probably with our boards and with our attorney. So what ended up happening with it is very soon after, a lot of pushback in the state. And what the secretary, the Vermont Secretary of Education has decided is that we won't have each of the local districts sign off. They're going to sign off at the state level, and they're basically, I think what they're going to see, I haven't seen the letter yet, but the basic gist is the locals are signed off and have done this, and they're going to certify that we're following Title VI. Interestingly enough, you all know that I like ChatGPT a little bit. So I took all of the language from the assurances that were sent, the new assurances. I dropped them into ChatGPT and I said, please summarize this for me. And it summarized it as, this is, I almost thought about sitting here and reading to you the ChatGPT summary. But essentially, 1965, I think it was 65, but non-discrimination law, blah, 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 blah. You can't discriminate against people, and took out all the other rhetoric when it kind of processed it. So it was kind of interesting and whatnot, but definitely consumed some time this week of figuring out how are we going to respond to that, what's it going to look like, because the two implications were this would have potential funding implications, and for the first time in my life as a superintendent, I had the federal government send me a letter that talked about making false statements, and that, some personal liability and whatnot associated with that. So it was interesting. All 54 superintendents in the state had the same letter. So for now, it's being tackled at the state level. I actually thought that was going to be the big thing that we were going to have to talk about here today, because I can see that this board may have wanted to wade into that in some way, shape, or form.
I mean, based on all the news I read, yeah, it was essentially the State Secretary of Education saying, no, Vermont's a sovereign place, we're going to do our thing, and that was that. So they are shielding you. Yeah,
I think once, let's say this in a nice way with it being recorded. I think the trip up here was, rather than just send that information out to superintendents on a Friday afternoon, we might have been better served if we'd said, hey, let's see if all the superintendents can get together on, if you didn't want to wait the weekend because we had an April 10th deadline, send me a note that says, I, Secretary of Education, am going to hold an informational meeting about this information on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, and I'm going to calculate that 50 plus superintendents would have jumped onto that call to see what was on and talked about the different implications and kind of see what was going on. So there really wasn't a whole lot of consultation. There was no consultation with the field. Right? And so that creates, I think that creates a problem. And I think one of the things that's unique about Vermont is every board would have a different reaction to that. Every superintendent would have a different reaction to that. Every community would have a different reaction to that certification and what was going on. In the end, I could have certified that I'm in compliance with Title VI because OSSD is, always has been, always will be in compliance with that, about not discriminating against kids. That's what that law says. They tied it a little bit, if you want to get really down into the weeds, and I bet you don't, but the little bit of that is they tied it to the Harvard case where the equal opportunity admissions were problematic. The Supreme Court said that this is the way we use Title VI is very different. That was the gist of that excitement from the federal government. So I don't know if you're catching this, but part of what's going on right now is when you think about what has to get done in schools, I love that you got Patty's presentation first because you heard a lot about teaching and learning. And since Patty finished at about 6:25, for the last almost 30 minutes, we've heard about a lot about legislation and maneuvering around and whatnot, not really positively impacting children. They're spending our energy. That's how it's got to be done. So, want to hear about H454?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I gave you so that everybody in the community would also have it in your board packet. I know that my board report was much longer than usual, and most of that much longer than usual was the actual language from an overview of H454. H454 is legislation about the potential changing of governance in the state of Vermont. You know that the governor came out early in the legislative session with an idea to go to 4 districts. You may know that the Bungarts plan came out or was being tossed around for a while, probably is still tossed around a little bit in the Senate for 12 districts. And the interesting thing about both of those plans is it's not really based in anything. It's just, let's go to 5 districts. Where do we pick 5? Nobody really has a good answer for where we pick 5 or how. That 5-district plan was built on the Vermont Superintendent Association's. Our group is built in 5 regions. I belong to the Winooski Valley region. That's where the 5 regions came from. Right? So regions that were productive for superintendents to get together and meet maybe once a month was what they were using to determine what are the school districts going to look like. So as things were going along, the Vermont Superintendents Association waded into this, and 454 is language or ideas. It's translated into legislative language around what, as superintendents, we are saying is important for you to consider. Right? Things that people have to think about. And what's interesting to me is as the 454, H454 coming out of the House, starts gaining traction. I think I shared with you in a weekly update the governor's press release that he would not release the legislature from session if there was no funding formula, if he didn't approve of the funding formula, and there weren't districts drawn. As a superintendent, we're sitting here saying, we need to get clear about what's going to make sense, what districts make sense, what inputs our community is going to have around that or not have around that. How does that go, right? And what the breakdown that I gave you in your board report talks about is each of the different pieces that would be considered in figuring out how to do that, how to go about who makes sense to be partners. I want to be really clear. Superintendents, I can't think of a single superintendent that wouldn't get behind a plan that we felt like was going to be good for kids, right? And that was going to work, even if it meant putting us out of work. I happen to have some credibility behind that because I am a superintendent who closed my supervisory union in Essex, Caledonia, about 7 years ago now. And so I believed in that. I went around to communities and I said, hey, your kids are going to get a better education. It's going to cost less. There'll be more opportunities. And what I had to work on there with some groups was, yeah, probably your local control piece. That's going to change a little bit. But as board members here, how much local control do you really have? When you stop and think about that last budget that you had to look at, what did you control in that budget? A pretty slim percentage of it, probably less than 25. So I'd be happy to review this. I think it's probably better just to point the community to check out the board report. It breaks it down in really simple, like really straightforward language. And I would encourage you to look through it. And if there was something that caught your eye that you want to talk about, I would encourage you to do that so that you're not here for the minutes. When I watched them try to present this in a committee meeting, it was a solid 90 minutes.
Now, we all received an email from the SBA about this that really summarized it very well. Remind me though, something is happening with it this Friday, and I forget if it's a vote or what.
Yeah, so it passed out of the House Ways and Means Committee yesterday, and they're expecting it to be voted on by the whole House Friday. And the VSBA did send you information encouraging you, if you were in support of this, to reach out to your House members. I would add to that, it probably doesn't hurt to let your Senate members know that you support it, even though they're not voting on it yet. And given the governor's press release, I would suggest to him that you might, if you support it, you might want to send something to him.
The House, the Senate, and the governor.
You know, I think this is, it's important work. It needs to be done, and it needs to be done right. You can run really, really fast north in on the next to the interstate if you want. But if you're trying to get to Lebanon, I don't care how fast you're going, you ain't gonna get there. Right? And I think for a long time, Vermont has not operated with a cohesive vision of education at the statewide level. We develop a vision of education within our buildings, within our schools. We kind of move along, but there is not an agreed-to vision throughout all of Vermont. And I'm a pretty big believer that that's the work of the Agency of Education, or the Commission on the Future of Vermont Public Education could do that work. You know,
Or maybe a statement that we like local control.
or maybe that might be. I mean, I think, you know, in all reality, costs are probably, in some ways, they're a factor. But if people are okay with the costs and are going to keep moving along with that, then okay. I'm a little concerned that we might be reaching a point where that doesn't jive. And I think that we're up against, Martha, the other piece being that we're up against facility challenges in the state of Vermont.
There's places where the state has orchestrated things that made people have to work with left hands tied behind their backs and things like that, so.
Sure.
Yep, no.
Sure. So that's it. I'm happy to talk about any section of that you want to talk about, or later in the meeting when we get to my board report, you want to talk about a section of that, I can do that too. But I thought that was probably the cleanest way to talk with you about the most up-to-date, most relevant legislative happenings without going through, the last month's worth of, because there have been lots of zigs and zags in the last month. And I suspect there'll be a fair amount of zigs and zags between now and the time that they adjourn the legislature.
That's very good.
Can I ask where the Senate is on, because I know we've gone past crossover date.
Yep.
So they've received a version of this and are,
So I believe that H 454 got special, there's an exception created for
Gotcha.
crossover.
Okay.
And so when the House passes 454 on Friday, assuming they pass 454 on Friday, it'll go over to the Senate. The Senate had some different ideas. It's the Bungard's proposal was sitting there. And I frankly, with everything else that was going on with the other things this week, I don't know how that's changed since last week. The House, the SBA does not send you out alerts if they think something's got an easy path, right? So I think
Yeah, that's the other question I have is, if this fails, what, on Friday, does the governor's proposal just get adopted? What happens then?
That still has to be ratified.
nothing
Okay.
happens. And so at this point, I'm pretty sure the governor's proposal is done and over with. It's not going to be that. When you had the legislators come and talk with you, you heard that early on, right? So now I imagine there's got to be some give and take between the executive branch and the legislative branch deciding who's going to go with this.
so it sounds like if it doesn't pass on Friday, they might have to rescind.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, when we get to your report, maybe we can pick one piece of it to tear apart a little bit.
If there's a part that you want, for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't really feel the need, since we don't need to take any action on it beyond outside of this, contacting other legislators if we support it.
As
but-
individuals.
Yeah. But we don't need to act on this as a board.
Correct.
I don't really feel the need to dive deeper.
Thank you, Michael. Boy, that's a lot. Thank you for making it palatable. Moving on to board process, how are we? Staff appreciation. I have to admit that in terms of our annual calendar, I was a week late, or a month late in getting this on, so we're a bit in a, let's get a subcommittee together and get this going. So in your packets, you'll see Staff Appreciation Week is the 5th to the 9th, right?
If it goes the same as it was last year.
Okay.
So I haven't gotten an announcement, but if it follows
Yeah.
that same pattern, that's what.
So that's, so basically that means we've got to figure out in this meeting who is going to take this on, what they're going to do, and authorize them to do it. Because we won't have our May meeting to figure that out. So what we've done in the past is the gift cards, right? And I think, Sam, you were on this committee, right, last year? You went around to local businesses, and what were there, 5 last year?
Yeah, I believe that's right, maybe 6.
Maybe 6, and got a certain number of $10 gift cards to those local businesses, and then that was presented to each and every staff member. So I don't know if someone thinks it's a bad idea to continue in that vein again. You see the budget that we have there. Do people have other ideas that they want to make sure are heard? Or do they love that one?
How was it received last year?
In my role as a business owner, I was thanked several times. I think while it's not that much money, it certainly can buy a breakfast sandwich.
We have an administrator down here who says the staff seem to appreciate it.
They did, very much. Yeah, it's always nice to have a little, an extra treat. And that's what it felt like, people felt seen and recognized for it.
And I think it's what, I understand that, I think it before my time on the board, that it sometimes was like a breakfast or something.
It was like, they brought like a tray of stuff
A
to the
treat.
teacher's room. Yeah.
Yeah, but this gives them
This
kind of,
seems a little bit,
We do a lot at the school level too. I will say that. Administrators do a lot at the school level, so it was nice to have something that didn't impact what we were doing also.
sure.
I mean, I think if it was well received, it seems like we'd want to do that.
Yeah. So in that case, do I have any volunteers for people who would be willing to go around to 4, 5, or 6 local businesses, so we can keep it in the community, and talk about, and make clear to the business owners that we're not asking for a donation, we're looking to purchase these, to go around and see if they want to participate.
What businesses did you go to last year, and should we be tapping them again, or should we be looking for new?
Well, the word tapping, again, I just want to make clear, we are not asking for a donation.
Right, all right.
This is a sale.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily, there's some kind of behind the scenes time of putting gift cards together, but it's not, it's a positive for the businesses as well. I know Wit and Grit was one of them. Sam?
Yeah, we did Wet and Grit, Chef's Market, Blue Moon, Weebird, maybe Valley Bowl.
Abby
Short
saying short
notice.
notice. Thank you.
I had Sarah help me with it last year, so she did have.
Village
I
Pizza.
did have.
Thank you, Lauren.
is there, hey Sam, did you have a list? Do you have some paperwork that you and Sarah, or did you work with Kyle? Do we have a record?
Yeah, we have-
of what was the
we have a
Whoever
record in
does
the
it can
central
look it up.
office.
Pardon?
We definitely, because the businesses were paid, so we definitely
Oh, so we
have.
could just look it up and
Exactly.
see who he is.
Exactly. So if we wanted to do the same ones, or, I think that would be up to the committee members. As I do often when I ask for committee members, I'll ask the person who was on it last year if they were interested in continuing in that role. And yes or no is fine, but I'm seeing a no.
Sure, yeah, happy to do it.
Okay. And is it, I assume it's helpful, but maybe not, to have someone join you in making those phone calls or visits to businesses?
Certainly.
Okay. I have the capacity to do it, but if there was someone else who was interested in that footwork.
Happy to help, Hannah.
Emil and Sam, thank you. Now, there needs to be some kind of vote here because, a motion and a vote because money's involved. So a motion first for a subcommittee to be formed and the members, and then a motion for their charge and what we're authorizing them to do. So I will move that we create a subcommittee to work on the staff appreciation that needs to be all buttoned up and ready for May 5th, and for that committee to consist of Emil Parmalee and Sam Hooper. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Rachel Fish. Further discussion? All those in favor, please visibly and audibly say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Do I have a motion for the charge of that committee?
Does the charge list the amount right now, or is the charge of it not?
Yes, which would be $3,260.
We know that for sure?
Well, it's 326 staff members
Oh, perfect.
and $10.
$10 each, all right.
Were they putting cards or anything last year? Were there other I'm just curious if there was other. Sam, was there other administrative costs last year, like putting them into cards, or they were just? Kyle's not.
No, the businesses either had cards that they could put the charge onto, or they just did a piece of paper form, and they just created an invoice for us, and we brought it to the central office, and then made a check out to them.
And then they're distributed. I mean, we're asking for some staff labor on this, so we just want to be really clear what we're asking.
Yeah, right. And then I believe Kyle helped with distributing them to principals, and then they got deployed from there.
Okay.
So
So,
I do have a query. Is there anything done for the paras in the same way?
yes.
Say that again?
Does this include the paraprofessionals?
Yes.
Okay.
I also just want to take a moment to point out that we are asking for staff to be, we are hoping for staff to be involved and take some time in order to have this done. That needs to go through Michael. We are not, we don't manage nor supervise Kyle. So any administrative task that we feel we might need support for from the district office needs to go through Michael. Yeah, so we so appreciate Kyle, but we can't be asking for favors. Kyle doesn't work for the board. Okay?
Sounds great.
Does that sound, okay. So I'll make a motion. I'm not gonna entertain one, I'm gonna make a motion that the subcommittee just created be authorized to spend $3,260 in the form of 326 $10 gift cards to be purchased from the board budget for Staff Appreciation Week. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you for the second, Ryan. Further discussion? All those in favor, visibly audibly?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Just another thank you to Emil and Sam. This is a real fast turnaround, so much appreciated. Let's see. I gotta turn it back to
Then I'm just going to announce, the next thing was just going to announce so the VSBA through Debbie Singeiser, how you say her last name, she is doing a policy governance 101. So a lot of times the VSBA offers kind of a general board 101, but policy governance is more specific. So she has created something for policy governance boards, and she just asked me if I would make sure that any of our new board members, or if there were board members who felt like they wanted it, just to be aware that it's an option. And you can find it on the VSBA website. I told her we were already doing the accelerator, but this is a one-day event, and you would be with all other new policy governance board members. So it's just another option for training if people wanted it.
Is that the one on May 4th or?
Yes, she's got 2 dates. One is Sunday, May 4th at Winooski High School. And it's an all-day training in person from 9 to 3:30. And then they're also doing one May 3rd from 9 to 3:30, and that's at Otter Valley Union High School over in Brandon, as well as a second option. So she just asked me to share that with our board, anybody who is interested.
And there are no costs associated, correct?
No, there is a cost.
Okay.
It's $350, but I don't think we've gone over our training budget by any means.
We haven't, but we would have to vote for it to be spent on this if board members were
Yeah.
signing up for it. Or interested.
Well, I don't know, would you have to, do we have to vote on that, or can they just let you know as the chair?
I would prefer to vote on any spendage of money.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have an issue that I don't begin to know how to, I've already spoken a little bit about it. I do want to attend, but we're traveling and I'm not exactly sure when we're getting back. And it kind of depends on how tired and how all that kind of dynamics. So it's either the 3rd or the 4th.
Okay, so,
One way or the other, I should try.
well, we don't want to spend the money if you're not. Now, and this is not the one and only chance to do this kind of 101 training.
Well, it's the one, I don't know when she'll offer it again. I mean, you could email her and see if she's going to offer it again in the fall, but it's coming around because people have it's for new board members on policy governance boards.
So might I suggest that if someone, Martha or anyone else, is going to, for this, when we face this way, looking to sign up for it, please send me an email. And once I know how many people are planning to sign up for it, then I can call, we can call a special meeting. And it can all be remote, and it can be one of our quickie 10-minute, hey, we're, approval to spend that money. All right, so email me if you're gonna sign up for that. Because then it would still need to be paid, so, yeah. Okay, thank you, Anne. Accelerator Module 5. Who's going to dive us into this conversation? Have people had a chance to do, are people caught up with their modules?
This is the first one.
Excuse me.
I will fess up, but we had a couple weeks.
Yeah, and I'm not looking for people to, there's no slap on the wrist. Life happens. I just want to make sure that we are keeping up with it because, fruitful conversation, and this kind of has to do with what will the follow-up process be. Sometimes it's hard to have fruitful conversations in this kind of setting about each module, but that may be a reason we want to think about what Anne suggested in the last meeting, kind of having someone come and let us kind of throw all of our thoughts out on the table, and they can help us summarize everything we're learning.
So at the last meeting, and with the consensus of the board, wanted to know what was involved in the contract. And what's involved in the contract is for each member a 30-minute coaching session with Jeannie Collins. I'm pretty confident that if you wanted to have Jeannie Collins come to a board meeting and facilitate this conversation, so there was a facilitated conversation, she might be willing to do that. Now, she'll be remote, but we could do something like that. I'm also pretty confident that if you wanted to do something, the other idea that you kind of were tossing around the last time was, do we do a big debrief in July at the retreat? And so, again, I think she would participate likely remotely, but I suspect that she might be willing to come in, lump the 30 minutes that each member has in some different way, put something else together.
So what's your July dates?
So the July meeting is one that we kind of reserve. We call it in parentheses, if needed or if wanted. So because it's not in the school year, we consider it one that has more flexibility and allows us a time to for it not to be this kind of meeting, but more a retreat that can have kind of one or maybe two topics. So we haven't talked about a date yet, because it doesn't necessarily have to be in our second Wednesday of the month schedule. Would people be interested in this being the topic of our retreat? I think retreat is a funky word to use. I just want to put that out there, because that, at least in my brain, implies a day-long trust fall kind of thing.
If I recall, last summer, it was such a,
Yes, I mean, it has, we had a 2-hour meeting last time, so I refused to call it a retreat. Food is usually involved, so that's a plus. You know, I don't know. I have issues with that word, clearly. What do people think about us seeing if, instead of the contracted 30 individual minutes, that we ask more for a group moderated discussion about the entire accelerator program?
I guess the question that I would have about that is just, as we're thinking about how to use precious time, I don't know what else could happen during that meeting. And so that's like, you know, I'm just wondering, I'm not proposing that there is something specific, I'm just asking, like, if there are other things that time would want to be used for.
I guess my one idea might be that, you know, the ends committee, there's a subcommittee for the ends that we're on, and we kind of put it aside during budgeting season, but that might be a topic that's worth its very own meeting with every member of the board. So I have to say hi to Lydia, because I see Lydia there with Rachel. Oh, she's gone. So that, you know, just throwing things onto the table, I think that a retreat just centered around the ends might be interesting. Could they be tied together?
They'll be in ends, ENDS, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, that's correct.
And
So that's what we as a board, that's kind of like our primary job, is to name what the ends are.
like capstone type end?
What the result of what the work is done. When the work is done, what should be the result? What do we want the end, I hate to say product, to be? That's our job. We name the ends. We set limits on how they can be achieved and say, you figure out how you're going to do it. We have nothing to do with the means. You figure out how you're going to do it. We're going to monitor how you're keeping to the limitations we've set, and have you report back to us how you're doing on meeting what we have named as the ends. The ends policy is the very first policy of our governing policies. And we put a subcommittee together last year to look at them because they had been developed several years ago. So we charged the subcommittee with looking at them and making sure that that's still in the current makeup of the board, what that they still represent where this board what the board wants the ends to be. I'm not being very eloquent right now. And so that subcommittee has been working on remolding. And you, Emil, anyone want to jump in and be more eloquent?
Who was on that committee?
That committee is myself, Rachel Fish, Emil Harmony,
And was Rachel?
And Rachel, yeah.
and Rachel.
Other Rachel.
Large subcommittee. And then often Heather and Michael would also attend. It being such a large subcommittee, that kind of leads me into, well, at this point, because it meant a lot, we got a lot of work done, and we all kind of felt like we're ready for input from the rest of the board with where we got, that lends itself to, okay, are we in a moment where the subcommittee is disbanded and we're going to come together as a full board and talk about if what the subcommittee came up with should be voted in as the new ends policy, the reworked ends policy.
Can you give me a few handles of what are some of the topics that the ends included?
There's some really good information in that white binder that you got, but I'm kind of wondering if it would be helpful to have that facilitated conversation at the beginning of the retreat so that we have a shared common language and a shared understanding of what the ends are, why they're important, what they are, how they stand currently, the work that the board did, and then go into the ends discussion. Because I think when I look around the table, half the board has less than 14 months experience on a policy governance board. So we're a novice board in terms of understanding this conceptually.
Which I always feel the need to say this, but that's going to be the case every single year.
Right.
So it's something that we're kind of always going to be, that doesn't make it any less valid what you just said, but there will always be a novice to this kind of board, and the people who have been on the board for years can also be considered novices as well. I mean, that's why we're doing this training. That's a little bit of a different ask for Jeannie, right? But
I would imagine she would feel very comfortable doing both. You know, sort of helping us understand and get everybody up. So it's similar, it's making me think of Patty's, you know, everybody having the same
Shared
language
language,
and
yeah.
understanding before we then dive into a specific element of policy governance, which is your ends, which then drives the whole system of governance. So to me, that I think she would be more than willing to do that. And if I just calculated, if we have 8 board members, if we each get a half hour, that's 4 hours of,
I don't think we want to do it.
4 hours of training time. But I'm just saying, that's 4 hours of training time that we've paid for because, and again, I'm not sure.
Literally, we paid for 4 hours of training time. We paid for 4 hours of coaching time.
Coaching time, there we go.
There might be some
Yeah,
conversion
yeah,
between training
yeah.
and coaching.
Right.
So I wonder if, I want to make a proposal before I make a motion, but I wonder about charging Anne with contacting her and seeing if instead of that individualized coaching, if we could find a common date in July and do kind of half.
Hybrid.
Yeah, yeah, and she would be remote, but it would be kind of half summarizing and getting us all on that same playing field in terms of policy governance as a whole, but then the second half being
dive
very
into
focused
ends.
on OSSD ends.
Yeah. What do you think, Michael? You did the initial contract with her on
Yeah.
this training.
And I talk with her on a regular basis, so I'd be
even
happy
better.
to have that conversation with her if that's the direction you'd like to go. And I guess part of my question is, would you like to have some out? I mean, Jeannie Collins is sort of the Vermont expert on policy governance. Would it be helpful to have an outside person facilitate some of the, like her guidance at that meeting? Right?
Yeah.
So not just the, we have a contract with her, I signed into a contract with her at the beginning of the year so that I had some training around policy governance. We haven't used a lot of that contract. We could use that contract in this case as well to get the board there. So I could picture doing something. Why don't I talk to her and have, I'll describe the conversation that just happened here and ask her what she thinks she could do. And I'll also ask her, when she does come to Vermont, I'll ask her if there's, I assume you'd rather have her in person, but understand that she's not always in Vermont, so I will see if there's a way to coordinate that.
Great.
Nice.
Yeah?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Sounds great. Thank you, Michael.
Great.
I appreciate that. Ba-dum-bum. Okay, continuous improvement plan.
Oh, great. All right. Everyone, thank you so much for making time on the schedule tonight for the continuous improvement plan. It's in your board packet. Before, I have prepared a presentation, which I would like to display now. Let's see if this works. All right, present now. Continuous improvement. And I guess I go here and I go to slideshow. Look at that. All right. All right, everyone. Before I dive into the actual continuous improvement plan, which is in your packet, I'd like to explain a little bit about what the continuous improvement plan is. And so the continuous improvement plan is required by the state of Vermont and required by the federal government to access title funding. And it compels us to look at our systems and to look at our data to set goals and investments for how we will use that money to directly impact student outcomes and student performance. And so over the past few weeks, OSSD conducted a needs assessment. So we looked at all that data, right, to create our annual continuous improvement plan as required. So that data inventory, which would have been another 24 pages of information, right, as required by the Every Student Succeeds Act. And it informs how we will use these grants. So we're compelled when we're looking at this data, right, that we will be considering all student outcome data and how we can use that data to identify district needs and then use that data specifically to inform our school plans and our title grant investments. So this was worked on collaboratively, this data inventory, by Lisa Floyd, Patty Sprague, Kara Houston, Mindy Beth Pike, Melinda Robinson, and myself. And we look to really highlight our key needs when it comes to literacy, math, science, social emotional learning, family engagement, and very much, as you were talking about before, connected to our ends, right? What data do we have that's connected to the ends and student outcomes? And once we had that, that's what guided the continuous improvement plan creation. So I'm quickly going to go through some of our key literacy needs and how we plan to invest based on those needs. So we found that less than 50% of second graders can decode grade level words. While over the past 3 years, ELA proficiency has increased by 5%, which is great, we have not yet reached our district goal to achieve 75% proficiency. And as the little chart over there on the left shows, our middle school students and some students across grades 7 through 11 are struggling to meet proficiency. So after looking at that data, we came up with investments that we identified for literacy. And that will be cohesive MTSS, which are our multi-tiered systems of support to target student needs directly, right where they are, to move the needle. And additional professional development for staff to use research-based intervention strategies right in the classroom, like intervention in the classroom as well as interventionists in addition to the classroom. And so we sort of went through this cycle with ELA and mathematics. So in math, again, we saw some improvement in proficiency, but the district, again, has still not met that goal of being 75% proficient in all grade levels. And again, there on the left, you can see some of our Cognia or VT-CAP data, that we saw some decrease in proficiency with the adoption of Carnegie, which is our new math curriculum. And so that guided our investments to say, okay, we want to focus again on that MTSS and those targeted interventions, but also put some PD money, professional development money, right, to help teachers to be able to use that newly adopted math curriculum well and effectively, and to engage again in the research-based interventions. So a lot of this is stuff that we already do, but we're telling the grants we're going to keep doing this because we need more, right? It's not that we've not done any of this before, it's that we're saying we still have a need, we're still going to invest. That moves us to our science needs with our key findings, that again, while elementary proficiency has increased, we have not met our district goal of the 70% proficiency. And the middle and high school students are significantly underperforming, with only 26% of 8th graders and 42% of 11th graders reaching that science proficiency. So definitely room for growth there. So we will continue to invest in STEM programming, continue to invest in professional development for staff to access the science curriculum and STEM investments we have. And those will be our targets for science. That moved us on to attendance and engagement. And we saw that there is really interesting. It was like a barbell. Our youngest students who needed the most foundational developmental skills had the highest incidence of poor attendance. And then at the high school level, students who had consistently struggled with attendance, we see that they're still struggling. And there was some difficulty engaging families in school events at all levels. Some principals reported, we see the same families every time, or the people we need to come are not the ones who come, meaning that the highest need families sometimes are not engaged in school events. So we identified we need to continue to invest in family engagement. I think the community has seen that we have been doing that. We have a lot of great family evening events. And to continue to encourage families to attend those, we will continue to invest in SEL training for staff to support student mental health and attendance. We partnered with Gifford on a new Everyday Matters grant, where we're going to be targeting improving attendance at all grade levels. And we'll continue to invest in our community-centered activities, our community engagement nights, our preschool engagement nights, and other things where we bring families in for celebrations of learning. And then I'm starting to condense because we're getting into things that are less academically aligned, but important to these grants. College and career readiness, key findings. For the most part, we're doing well with that. We want to continue what we're doing. We are seeing that students feel that they have access to career readiness. We could improve our community connections for flexible pathways, such as work-based learning. For social and emotional learning, our key findings were that 15% of elementary students need targeted support, specifically in SEL. And those 15% of students are engaging in most of the behaviors that are interrupting instruction. So that's an important place to invest. We found that middle and high school students have been benefiting from the Wayfair SEL program, but not all staff fully understand or are able to use it. So those investments will be to continue to provide intervention with SEL support, which is an investment we already have in our title grants, so we'll continue that work, and also additional training for faculty to access Wayfinder and other SEL lessons, and also to start using this tool that we're just going to adopt called EduClimber. EduClimber is a data dashboard that will help not just with behaviors, with all our data points, our academics, our SEL, but it will be a very helpful tool in identifying how we can help students remain regulated and access learning. Parent and family engagement. This is a critical thing that we must engage in, and we found that family attendance at most elementary schools is strong, but engagement could be further improved. And family attendance at middle school, high school events is sporadic, and engagement can be further improved. And by sporadic, I mean if it's a celebration of learning and their children are there, right, presenting, families tend to go. If it's an evening night that we've tried, such as, we did a math games night, we really only got families that were already doing well engaging in mathematics. So our wondering is how do we engage families who really could have benefited from that more? So we plan to continue to use grant funding to stipend teachers to run family nights, focused on academics and SEL skills. We're already doing that. But we're also want to continue to provide educational resources to families and get them engaged. So we're actually trying some really creative things. Like we're going to be buying some pool passes and some other high interest items to like raffle off for families to hopefully get families who might not otherwise attend, but there's a chance to win these things to improve community engagement. And that's all allowable. Students experiencing homelessness. As of the time of this data collection, we had 10 students across the district who are eligible for what is called McKinney-Vento. And McKinney-Vento is funds that are specifically available from the federal government to meet the high needs of students experiencing homelessness. And these students often face tremendous academic need, attendance needs, SEL needs, right? So we will continue to set aside in our grants funds specifically for transportation and funds to continue to meet other needs that come up for these high need students. We had additional key findings in what's called well-rounded education needs, and that is where we fund STEM, this idea of providing a well-rounded education. We're compelled to identify safe and healthy student needs. We'll continue to work on family engagement in that arena. Effective use of technology needs. We need to increase the capacity of our regular classroom teachers to do hands-on science. So for them to access our STEM lab and use other tools. We have to continue to look at our professional development needs. We're going to be continuing our positive behavior intervention and supports, PBIS, and continue with data-driven instruction, which we'll be using that EduClimber to stay focused on where are the students now and where can we get them, right? Also, staff recruitment, retention, and evaluation needs. So that concludes the data. So before I move into the CIP, which is in the packet, do you have any questions about the data collection?
Tell us a little bit more about STAR and COG. I understand they are assessments. And
Yes.
Tell me give me the summary of the difference between them and how they're, executed. I'm just,
Okay.
if I hear that someone did poorly on STAR, I kind of just want to get a better sense of what that means.
So STAR is an assessment system that we have purchased that is aligned to the state assessment system, so that we can be getting a snapshot of students before they engage in that final assessment, so that we can have their learning on track. We don't want to wait until the end of the year for the state to tell us the gaps in our student learning. So STAR gives us snapshots, right? And we can generate reports on how classrooms are doing, how individual students are doing, how grade bands are doing, and use that to guide instruction across the district. Whereas Cognia or VT CAP, the same thing. That isn't a state mandated assessment that's used to track our efficacy across the state and compare this district to other districts. It's also tied to funding.
Comment on relation to the NAEP, National Assessment Education.
Oh, that's a surprise one. They let us know we're coming to do fourth grade. They came here, right?
They were here last year.
Yes, they were here last year. And I think that one we don't have any control over. It's a federal assessment.
So,
But just comment on how there's any intertwining of them?
It seems like they don't talk to each other, honestly. But, yeah, I think it's the same thing. Yeah, they're sort of siloed.
so just STAR and Cognia sound like they emulate the state assessment. Like, that's very broad.
With STAR, we use to guide instruction.
Okay.
The state assessment is used to basically, in my opinion, evaluate the district.
It's what is the tool that is used to measure the performance of the children.
Yep.
And in reality, what it does is, because you look at that in aggregate as opposed to individual students, it gives us an indication of what's happening over category.
And what kinds of information is available through the realtors, et cetera, so that people that are moving to the area can get a sense of what the scores are in the schools? Is it the NEEP or is it the...
So that would be from the Cognia, where they do the snapshot. It's actually called the snapshot. So on the Vermont Agency of Education page, there's a publicly available snapshot. And it measures us on many of these measures I just went through. Like, they measure us on things like a sense of equity and inclusion in our schools. They measure us on mathematical proficiency, ELA proficiency, science proficiency. So that is what a typical home buyer would be looking at.
How long have we been using STAR and Cognia?
So we just adopted STAR down to K3. So STAR now will be K to 12. Previously, from this year, we were using Track My Progress, K to 3. And then from 4 through 12, we were using STAR.
Thank you.
And Cognia has been adopted by the state. This is our third year.
Right?
See, either the second year or the third year.
I think it's the third, but the first we didn't get the results.
That's right. And prior to that, what was the name of the assessment before that? The NECAP.
Correct.
So, ideally, we use this data to inform instruction so that we can, when you know better, you do better, right? So if we know what students' needs we can provide it. So that's where the CIP comes in, and I guarantee this is much shorter than the data collection. I know the data collection is long, and it has to be, but otherwise, where we set our priorities, it would just be arbitrary. So the continuous improvement plan, which is in your packet, I just want to let you know that I'm going to need a vote on this, a motion and a vote. I want to let you know that on the first page where it says assurances, all of the assurances will be checked when this is submitted, with the exception of the one indicating the Resource Allocation Review, or RAR. All other assurances will be checked when this is submitted. So that would be a modification. In section 1, there will also be a modification where we will add the name Lisa Floyd, which is currently missing. Everything else will be submitted as represented here tonight. So if you could make a motion to approve it, because you see on the assurances, one of the assurances, this plan will be approved by the school board. So Based on all the data I just reviewed with you, we have come up with 5 goals. These goals are outlined in the continuous improvement plan and summarized on this slide. It's math data, protocols and interventions, science proficiency, family engagement, literacy proficiency, and compliance with Act 139, which requires that we notify parents, that we screen children, and that we notify parents of any concerns connected to early literacy, dated written. And then based on those goals, these are the investments we are going to begin or continue. And that is to continue our intervention and literacy coach and mathematics coaching and professional development that align with those investments. We will adopt and begin the utilization of EduClimber for data-driven instruction and SEL, using the STAR 360 to track and monitor progress and inform instruction, curriculum integration, and providing resources to families for better community engagement. And that's the plan. So I thank you for your support of this ongoing work, and I welcome questions or discussion and hope for a motion.
Michael, you had something to add?
Yeah, just going to add that we appreciate that we moved this up a month earlier than what you did last year.
We did.
And it's up a month earlier because in order to submit our grants, our title grants through the Vermont Agency of Education, we need you to approve the continuous improvement plan. So, and that, right now, we have a number of folks that some of our interventionists, some of our STEM teachers are not receiving a contract this week. They received a RIF notice pending the approval of the funding for the title funds. So by getting this done, we're able to submit it sooner than we did last year. By submitting it sooner than we did last year, we'll get the approval sooner than we did, and we're hopeful that we'll have approval before the end of the day.
That's the reason why we're doing it so soon, is so people can get their contracts. About 10 people are paid either partially or wholly through this grant.
May I see that data for the math and English language again, please?
Go back?
Yes, it is.
Okay. To the goals or to the data?
The data is.
All right, we're going back.
We could just do,
Okay.
let's see first. Okay. And the math, please. Is there a goal to increase these? I see the goal number 2, we'll increase our proficiency in science. Is there do we need a?
The goal is this, the district is still below the goal of 75%. That is
Okay.
our goal.
Right, I just don't see a specific goal for the math and literacy goals 1 through 5. Like it might, I must be missing something.
The their goals are numbered. So number 1 is math. And the only reason we have literacy as number 4 is because we're required to list them in that way by this template that's provided.
Oh, I see.
It's
Okay, I
not that
understand
like
now.
literacy is our 4th priority.
No, I understand. No, that's not what, no, okay, I understand. So goal number 2 is science proficiency. Goal number 4 is literacy proficiency.
Right, so if you look in section 2,
Okay.
right, in section 2, you'll see that there's goal 1 is math, and goal 2 is science, and goal 3 is family engagement. Then section 2A is where we must.
Totally, okay, because I guess the goal number, then school prioritized goals, where does it actually say the goal? Right, we will create 3 protocols for analyzing that. Right, but the
And
goal is not.
building interventions based on identified needs. So their outcome measure, so this is their goal, how is it going to be measured?
Right.
And then what are the resources that we needed?
Strengthen our MTSS systems with clear protocols for advanced data, create in and out of classroom interventions.
So you want more data?
So like, one of these, like Orton, Gillingham, I think, that's the dyslexia, Orton Gillingham's the dyslexia.
Yes,
Okay, thank you. That
So-
clarifies things for me.
that's part of the Act 139.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
And as Heather noted, this is kind of related to our last conversation about our role in creating the ends and the work that goes on to get the districts to those ends. We delegate. We do not tell them how to do it. We tell them what we want done. Yeah.
And then this is coming to us for approval because it's required.
Because it's required that we approve it. Yes.
And I want to point out that Section 4 is all about progress monitoring and reporting. And I'm happy as they have gotten much more strict on that. So this year, there'll be a lot more progress monitoring and reporting, and I'm happy to bring that to the board on a regular basis. If you want to see those grant reports, they will inform where we are. Like, they want more reporting. You can see that there's several pages of what we expect. And that's new for this upcoming year.
I think it might be interesting, not every meeting, but maybe kind of
It's
quarterly
quarterly.
or something
Exactly.
like that.
It is quarterly.
So the admin team has a retreat in June, and I suspect that by the time that retreat is done, we'll have a different way of reporting some of that stuff on a regular basis.
Great.
That's good.
So, barring any other questions, which is fine, I would entertain a motion to approve the continuous education plan.
Yep, let's go.
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you, Emil. Do I have a second? Thank you, Martha. Seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor, visibly audibly? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It does pass by majority vote. Thank you for
My pleasure.
the
Thank you for the
presentation,
time.
but more so for the work that went into it. Oh man, just flipping pages here. Okay. Moving on to EL 2.8. This is the first read. It did come later by email. Thank you, Michael, for that. Do you want to talk a little bit first?
Yeah. So this is one of the things that Jeannie and I do, is that we go through this and we look at it. And so the version that you have in your packet is the same version that was emailed to you on Monday night. And I'll share the conversation with Jeannie with you. So Jeannie looks at it and she's going through in her eagle eye kind of way. She says, Mike, I really like, so you got the G, the board has access to foundational and a transparent system for official communication between board members, officers, and committees. And then she comes over to my evidence of that. And she reads it out loud to me. And she says, so board communication has generally happened in open session following the expectation in Vermont open meeting law. The board maintains its own budget to fund should be needs that exceed what is provided, right? And so she says to me, Michael, what does the generally mean? And I had to say, well, I think sometimes we have information that goes out from boards. I haven't seen you communicating with each other back and forth, but I have seen emails and whatnot that go out between board members that, or from a board member to other board members, which is communication that's not necessarily making it into your board packet, right? So it's different than the communication that I provide you with information, right? When I provide you information, I'm not a board member, right? So as a superintendent, when I blind copy you on the weekly update that I send out every week, I made it so that you can't communicate with each other about it. But I'm telling you, this is what's happening on a regular basis throughout. So that's kind of an example of that. And so what I think I'm using this opportunity to do is to kind of say to you, just kind of keep that in mind as you're a board member getting ready to send an email to another board member. How is that working, or a group of board members?
Any board business belongs in a public meeting. Right? So I'm just saying this in another way from my board member perspective. If there is something that a board member wants to communicate to the rest of the board beyond scheduling, hey, where's the meeting, can be requested to be on the agenda. Ann and I will meet and determine if we have room and if it's an appropriate meeting for that agenda item. That can be sent, that request can be sent to Ann or myself. But anything that has to do with a conversation or here's a point for the board to think about or talk about needs to be in a public meeting, not on email. Any email communication between board members, very simple, again, scheduling, meeting location, that kind of thing, or that Michael sends to us.
Because if we reply, I remember talking about this last time, if we reply all or something, then that's a violation of open meeting.
Yes, it's a clear violation of open meeting law. Even that first email, not the reply all, the initial email.
That's right, that's why
to
I
all
don't
board
email
members
anyways.
having to do with board business is a violation of open meeting law.
So when a member of the public, of our community, emails everybody on the board, they're, is that, I'm just curious, does it also, so they're violating the public meeting law?
No.
It's only if we do. So if we reply to those emails. Okay.
The only person who should be replying to public emails is me. Sometimes I forget to BCC everybody, but it is in our board policy that I will respond to those emails. But like public comment, the only response I can give is thank you, received. Here's our complaint procedure, if that's inappropriate, what needs to be provided, or let me direct you to our superintendent or assistant superintendent for the information that you're requesting. The public doesn't have to adhere to public meeting laws, but we do. No, it's a valid question. I'm not poking fun at all. It's a good question.
The VSBA has a great webinar on open meeting laws. And if you haven't watched it, it's worth watching.
There's also great information in the back of our binder just about
Right,
open meeting laws.
and, right, in our meeting procedures, it tells you exactly what to do if you get an email,
Yep.
what the procedure is, how do you handle that. So, again, the binder should answer questions, and you can always reach out to a board member and say, hey, I got an email, what do I do? Or, I don't know about you, Michael, you probably don't want to have them, but Hannah,
Forwarding to me is your best, if it only goes to you.
what do I do with this?
But again, I just want to circle back to what we were talking about, which was communication between board members. That, it's very clear what the rules are.
It's definitely important that it happens here, that the public gets to
Right.
see that. I mean,
Transparency.
I think that in 10 months, we've been in executive session twice, right? So we've done a really nice job of making sure that all of the work that we're doing is right here in public session where the public can see the whole process and has access through their board packets to the information that informed that practice. So I think that's what my monitoring report basically says, is that I think we've done a pretty good job of making sure in the last 10 months that you have what you need and that we're doing what we need to do. That was the one thing that Jeannie caught, maybe a couple little typos that I'll clean up for the second read. And other than that, I feel like we're in a pretty good place. And I really appreciate the template, because I know when I was first doing these, it did not jive with my brain. This template makes it so easy, and I think it lets you just be able to go through and say, okay, what's the observable condition he's thinking that we're looking for, and does he have the evidence that matches up?
Does anyone first read have any comments, questions, or concerns for Michael?
But I just appreciate the format change. Jives better with my practices, so thank you.
Very easily.
And this is one of the reasons I wanted to flip-flop the EL and the continuous education plan. Boy, I can't. Anyway, I flip-flop those agenda items because this segues into, I think, our self-evaluation of our policy number 4.1 governing style. This is like the modules, and I always have trouble kind of framing these conversations, but I thought I would just share with you guys the phrases and words that I underlined / highlighted in this policy that I think are the most important for us to focus on and not grade, because, you know, we're supposed to do the what sometimes, always, never on Thursdays. These are always, we're always trying to progress and get better on these. I don't think it's a grading process. It's, are we working towards this still, right? Those underlined, highlighted phrases, I'm in policy wording, I'm in at the very beginning in that first box. E, collective rather than individual decisions. Big phrase for me. Next page, in number 2, the last sentence. The board's major policy focus will be on the intended long-term impacts outside the staff organization, otherwise the ends, not on the administrative or programmatic means of attaining those effects. Number 3, I put a little star and underlined respect of roles. In number 4, star and underline periodic board discussion of process improvement. Those ones I not only find the most important, I find them the most difficult, personally, to wrap my head around. The collective rather than individual entity. That was really hard. It's especially hard in a small town. When people come up to you in Shaw's and say, hey, what do you think about HB 2432? Hush up, but. So I guess let's just start with that one. Does anybody have thoughts about what it means, how we're doing with it? Did other people underline other things that are especially important or difficult? Or that we just are so fabulous at, we should be teaching our own trainings?
I just feel like we do this stuff.
We're always trying to do this stuff, right? This is why it's called governance style.
Yeah.
This is our job. We're always trying to do this stuff. I think it's also, in this moment, a really good time to say that part of our role and our governing style is being prepared. So this isn't for anybody to admit, and I'm not looking for a show of hands. This shouldn't be new. None of what I'm babbling about over here or that you've underlined, our work, our job is being familiar with these policies because they are policies under which we govern. You don't have to do the never, always, only on Mondays thing. You don't have to fill out the chart exactly how it says. But these should always be in our brains when we have our board hats on. I'm going to stop talking because anyone else has anything to say. And policy guru, what's going on in your board brain right now?
Well, I think we've done a good job of, I mean, we review these, we review how we're going to operate as a board. We review each one of our policies. Every month we take on a new one. Whether or not we have a super involved discussion, it doesn't always happen, but I would say our meeting, I think it was the last meeting that we had, we sort of had some kind of looking at, I forget exactly what we were doing, but it was a time when we kind of were looking at what is our role and distinguishing our role from Michael's role and had some good discussion around that. So, yeah. And you caught me on a night when I didn't do my evaluation. Oh,
And that's okay. Everybody, that is okay. I'm not looking to grade individually because we're a complete entity. But, oh man, what was I about to say? It was a good one. Oh, I wanted to share with board members who, this is, since you've joined the board, always how we've self-evaluated. I want to share how it was when I joined the board, which was one person was assigned to fill out a check or not check or thumbs up or thumbs down on did we do this in the meeting, and we'd get to the end of the meeting and the person who had been assigned it went down and said, yeah, I gave us, okay, and checked and thumbs down and check and thumbs down, and that was it. And it wasn't self-reflective. So I share that.
and this one is also very related to Module 5. So this is sort of, in policy governance, it really sort of tells you what you need to be doing. So this is one of those policies that's very clear about how we're going to govern and what that looks like. So again, if you're sort of like, you know, how would our board deal with this? A lot of times our policies will state clearly whose job it is and sort of how you would go about it. So it's very prescriptive, isn't it, right, Barb? in this section of our policies.
Say there is someone who's relatively new and has been following the policy governance modules. To me, I like reading through this, I was like, yeah, it feels like we're really doing all of these things because it's not always intuitive to me that this is how it should work. But the way that I've been learning and the way that everybody's been supporting me in learning makes me feel like, you know, we are trying to follow this pretty well. And I feel like people are very good about making explicit how our processes work.
Great. All right, well, I feel evaluated. Does everyone feel evaluated as a whole?
The only other thing I'd say is that when I do have questions about policy governance or really any of this, I feel like I'm always able to get them answered by you or someone else. So I feel like access to information is very easy. And That, when I reviewed these, that came up.
That's great. That's great.
It is great.
We can all support each other and help each other learn, because it's not, you're right, Rachel, it's not intuitive. It's weird. Okay, fine. Okay, we've made it to the consent agenda. We're only 24 minutes behind. That's nothing. Let's see, do people have anything about the minutes from the March 12th board meeting that they need updated, edited, corrected? Gonna take a moment to highlight Kyle and the minute-taking skills. Because I was an admin and I was terrible at minutes, so thank you for that. New hires, teacher contracts, I'll loop those together.
The only thing we want to add there is, Stan and I talked about this in the past, you've had the chair sign all of the contracts. Instead, what we're going to do is you have the information that went into all of the contracts in the consent agenda, and so again, doesn't have to sit there and sign all of the contracts. I'll take care of that.
Good. This is stuff that's in our packets, the summary of account and the auditor engagement letter, right?
That's all things that you're just going to put in when you motion to move it.
Yep.
You're approving it.
Great, and the leave, sorry?
Should we be listing board members as, I know we're technically providing documentation, but are we considering?
We're not hired.
Yeah.
Are you looking at
That's interesting. The new hire list.
Emil, what are you looking at specifically?
We have the new hire, we have Martha listed as a new hire of the district as a board member. And I don't remember that from last year.
Because we're elected.
Because we're elected.
I think that you're an employee as well
For our site.
for your stipend, which is why, that's why you go in there. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah. The reality of it is most of those, so we just put all of the new hires there. The only ones that the board actually approves are the teacher.
It's more an
It's just
FYI.
easier for you to approve it in the consent agenda, since you're just going to approve the consent agenda.
Yeah.
Break it down.
So hearing no uh-ohs, or what does this mean, other than the one we just got clarified, I will entertain a motion to take that consent agenda as an entire enchilada.
I'll move to pass the consent agenda as listed.
Great, thank you, Anne. Do I have a second?
I'll happily second.
Seconded by Emil. Further discussion? All those in favor, please audibly, visibly. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously.
We made up 12 minutes.
Look at that. Oh, now we're ahead of schedule. We should just rest. No. Okay.
There's still 12 minutes behind.
Okay, thanks. Okay, how quickly are you going to do your superintendent's report?
Yeah, we're in the superintendent's report from me. I'm happy to answer questions if you have it. I think that the one thing that I would do is I would draw your attention to the RTCC enrollment. We've been reporting, I think this is the third month in a row that we've been reporting the movement on that. And you can see that we are steadily moving upward. And that now we have 107 students. 4 of our programs have 14 or more kids in them, and 6 have met the requirements of qualifying for Perkins, which has 8. So we're at 60% of our programs now Perkins eligible, and 4 of our programs just really taking off. So things are coming along.
Boy, the report cards, that was a lot of work.
Oh, yes, and it's been a team of teachers from across the district. Their names are there. They deserve tremendous credit for the work they have done.
I'm going to name them now, if I may, just publicly. Amanda Cotter, Christine Spinella, Tracy Gardner, Sean McNulty, Rachel Bent, Heather Danahar, butcher these, Betsy Shands, Izzy Tone, Cecile Smith, Betty Young, Catherine Fredericks, Mindy Beth Pike, and Heather Lawler. Thank you. That's a lot of work.
And they're still in draft, and we're still
Right.
requesting feedback from families as we're close to the finish line, but we know there's going to be a few tweaks.
I did submit something, I haven't heard anything back, but I'm just curious, do I make comment on it now, or?
It's your meeting.
No.
Okay.
No, this isn't a discussion of a review of the report card, so not at this time. Community Google Meet. Michael, is there anything we can do to, I don't know, support attendance growing, or?
I think what's important about the community Google Meet is that it's there, it's available, people know, and if they want to come, they come. If they don't, they don't. And I'm okay with that. It's not like when I first started out that you had to be in a certain place at a certain time. I mean, I can do that community Google Meet from the side of the road if I need to, right? And so I just think it's a really great opportunity for the community to come in and talk. We're not doing one in April because we're on vacation, but we'll be back at it in May.
What kind of attendance do you get at that?
It's 6 people last time, it's my record.
But and I guess I'm calling it out because I want to use the opportunity to say it in meetings because it is there, and Michael, it's one of the many ways in which you are accessible to the community.
I think that's the important piece, right?
Yeah.
And you can come, you don't have to talk about my item, you can bring your own.
Awesome. All right. What else is closing? Resignation updates, newsletters.
Sent those out today?
You did, yes, thank you. Action item recap. Let's see, we've got a subcommittee formed and they're gonna get on the task they've been charged with. Michael, you're gonna talk to Jeannie about maybe some plans for a July retreat. And once we identify that hopefully is a possibility, we can start talking dates. That would be an example of something we can email about to identify a date for that retreat, in which case I might remind myself how Doodle works and put together a doodle poll. If there are a couple dates that Jeannie gives us, we'll kind of base it around that and then see how we're doing with that.
I'll suggest that a lot of people I know move to when to meet. It's like when number 2 meet. And I find that it is much better for actually finding, it's just easier to use to figure out a time.
Meet. Thank you.
Yeah.
I also feel ridiculous saying doodle, so thank you.
And I think I didn't know where it went, but do you want to consider moving the
Thank you.
June meeting that's currently scheduled for the same night as the Brookfield culmination of 6th grade?
Yeah.
Same time, same night.
Yeah.
So if you moved it 1 week earlier to the 4th, you would not have any conflict.
So we're talking about,
June 11th.
June 11th at 6 o'clock. So let's go ahead. I love when things are just thrown onto the table to consider. Is it possible for people to move 1 week earlier to June 4th, 6 o'clock, Randolph Elementary? Do we need to check on the RES calendar that we could be in?
We should find a place.
We can find a spot. Okay. June 4th. Yeah?
It's a Wednesday, right?
It is a Wednesday. It'll now be the first Wednesday of that month. I've got a thumbs up there.
6/4 at 6.
6/4 at 6. All right, so let's start getting that out publicly, that is a change. Great. Yep, we have to vote on that. It's a change to our calendar that we voted and approved. So I'd like to move that we change the date of our June meeting from June 11th to June 4th, first Wednesday of June at 6 o'clock at RES. Do I have a second? Thank you for the second. Ryan? All those in favor, visibly audibly? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously.
And just remember, by moving it, we made it a special meeting, we won't be able to adjust the agenda. Okay.
Great.
We come in and we do what we need to do.
Yes.
We build that agenda in a really careful way. And
Yeah.
we can follow.
And it is what it is. Got it. Thank you. Thank you for that reminder. And I'll just say our next meeting is May 14th at 6 o'clock. It is in the media center at the high school, and it is preceded
By the RAD.
by the RAD. That is the RTCC Advisory Committee. The board, I guess, with the B. At 5 o'clock. Okay?
That's fine.
That's 5 is RTCC, and Ann is our representative on that committee, but anyone is welcome to attend and listen.
And the RAD.
Yeah.
Just won't be a vote.
So with that, and no need for executive session, I move to adjourn the meeting at 8:21.
4 minutes early.
We've never done that. So adjourned.